Everybody hear me?
My article is
We don't have any screeching. Okay. So I'd like to introduce Mayor Engen. Missoula native John Engen is in his third term as Missoula's 50th mayor. His 10 years as mayor have been marked by accomplishments in economic development, streamlining the city's zone code and its planning office to serve people better, and preserving and enhancing Missoula's quality of life amenities like trails and open space. Missoula today is known as one of the country's best places to live because of these efforts. Mayor Engen is working hard today to acquire Missoula's water system for its people. Please welcome Mayor Engen.
Thank you very much. You're very kind. I think the introduction actually longer than my remarks, so which is a good thing. However, I do have a 75-slide PowerPoint. But do we have the AV team? Probably great. Fair enough. I am tickled to have all of you here today for a wide variety of reasons, not the least of which is that over the course of the now 11 years I've served as mayor of Missoula, I've seen a lot of our planning efforts begin to come to pass, and they've come to pass in fairly miraculous ways, and we're incredibly lucky that we're able to stand, as they say, on the shoulders of giants who thought about this place in a way that would be a place for a very long time. So as you look outside this hotel, for example, you'll see a trail system that extends all the way down the Clark Fork River and across the river, and includes a connection for bikes and walkers only, and brings the community together and makes commuting for folks who don't necessarily A, have a car, B, want a car, C, need a car, to get from point A to point B relatively painlessly, healthily, and most of the time happily. And that's all because we all lean into it, right? We all think about these things in ways that matter. We plan, we invest, and we make change, and that's awfully cool. So on a beautiful spring day in Missoula, Montana, you all think about biking and walking and transit. You are in a place where all those things matter every day and will continue to matter more and more. And it's a good thing that they do, because I think those changes are afoot in many communities, absolutely necessarily, and we have done it out of choice. And that's a pretty remarkable thing as well. I hope the rest of the day treats you kindly. The police are aware that the summit is happening. The code word is sprocket. That will relieve you of most tickets for nonviolent offenses. So have a great day, have fun, and thank you for being here.
Or there'll be summiting going on. I'm done. Come on. It's your thing. It's not. I can.
Let's all give Mary Engen another round of applause. Thank you very much. So next I would like to introduce Kevin McLaurey. Kevin is the administrator of the Montana Division of Federal Highways Administration. He has many, many years working within federal highways in different offices and in different positions around the country, so he comes with a wealth of experience. Just a quick little story about Kevin and my progression in getting to know Kevin better. Kevin first attended our summit 3 years ago. It was the first summit that we had in Helena, and he was this person that just sat in the back, and I never had any idea who he was. He kind of came and went, and it wasn't until either the end of the day or after that when I finally learned who he was. Just a silent person back there, listening in. So then the next year we had our summit in Billings, and he called me in advance, and said, hey, coincidentally, he's going to be in Billings at the time of our summit, and would it be okay for him to come in and out as he is able to? And he attended the social event that evening, and I got to talk with him some then and got to know him a little bit. And then it was after that when Federal Highways was tasked with having a bike ped assessment. So he reached out to me then and asked me if I would be part of the planning for that. And then last year, our summit was in Helena, and he came, and I think you were there most of that one. Plus you had at least 3 of the staff come, and that wasn't the first time the staff had come to our summit. I think they've come each year, but last year we had even a bigger representation. And Kevin has a fantastic group of staff working for him. I've really enjoyed getting to know them better and working with them. And I have to say, they are really good supporters of the work that we're doing. And we're really fortunate to have each person in that office, and especially Kevin as the administrator. So, without any further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. As Melinda said, I'm Kevin McLaurey. I'm the division administrator. And for those of you that don't know Federal Highway, we have a division office in every state in the U.S. Okay? So we have a local presence. A presence that we work with locals to help try to develop projects that move people and goods. Now, people and goods, a lot of times people think, well, that's just cars, trucks, things like that. But as I'll talk about in a little bit, it also is people that bike and walk. And that's as important as those people that are in cars and trucks. There's a balance that we need to come to. And I think Mayor Ingen has left, but you know, it's been a good partnership with the city of Missoula, the state of Montana, and Bike Walk Montana, as we have grown in our knowledge and understanding of what biking and walking mean to a community and how it can help grow a community. And so with that, I've got some new presentation software, so I'm just forewarning. I'm not foreshadowing that something's going to go wrong, but I'm going to try this. So, you know, as we move through this, it's a journey, right? It's a journey. I mean, things don't happen overnight. The same way with transportation projects. It's a journey. And so I'm entitling my talk today, Healthy Bodies, Healthy Minds, because that's what this is about, right? This is an opportunity to, and Mayor Ingen, I don't know if you've seen him a few years ago, he was heavy, he was a heavy guy. First time I've seen him in a while, he looks fantastic. What was the first thing I said to him? Oh, you must be biking and walking. And he said, yeah, and a little gastric bypass helps too. But anyway, so as we move down the path, this is where we're headed. We're headed down the road, and you have to ask yourself, you know, is biking and walking a new phenomenon in transportation? Because over the last couple of years, it's been really talked about, and a lot has been discussed, and projects are moving. So this has got to be new, right? It's got to be. Well, not really. If you take a look, legislation goes back all the way. I mean, in legislation, there's discussion. In T21 and safety, that's what I call our caffeine legislation. And then we moved into our driving legislation because then it's MAP and FAST, which, and if you look between 05 and 12, I mean, there was a huge gap in there that we kind of dribbled and drabbed. As all of you know, if you're wanting funding, it's really tough. But, you know, so we went from caffeine to driving in the legislation. But the point here, we had legislation all the way back to 1998 that talked about biking and walking. So is this a new phenomenon? No, it's not. Has it taken a while for us to kind of get it? Yes, it has. So since it's been around so long, why are there so many misconceptions out there? There's a lot of information that people are just like, well, we can't do this because, and it's usually because the Fed said you can't. Well, I'm here to tell you, We're the friendly guys. You know, and Transportation Alternative Program, it's the only source for ped and bike projects, right? That's the only source of money. Absolutely not. It is not. Federal funds allowed to build separate bike lanes. Can we build separate bike lanes with federal dollars? You betcha. Betcha. And if it works for your community, I'd encourage it. Can we use federal funds for road dives? We did. There's a road here in Missoula that we did a road dive on, and actually it works. Can we use CMAQ funding for non-motorized projects? CMAQ is congestion mitigation air quality. It's a type of funding that the federal dollar has. The answer is yes, you can. The Green Book, design standards. This is one that's interesting. Are they required on federally funded projects? You must follow that Green Book. Now it's AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. That is the organization that establishes the designs for the country, okay? So can you deviate from those design standards? Yes, no? Yes, yes, or can. It's flexibility. But let me caution you on design. Let's not suggest or push a design that's not safe, right? Because safety needs to be our number one concern. And we don't want a design that is going to put people in harm's way. That's not what we're talking about. But does it have to exactly follow the Green Book? No, you're exactly right. Curb extension trees, roundabouts built on the NHS. Hey, a couple of years ago, if you didn't have a roundabout in your city, you weren't in vogue in this state. There's lots of roundabouts going in. For some biking and walking, it's an education piece that if you don't know how to navigate a roundabout, if you're biking and walking, I suggest educate. Learn how to navigate those. Speed limits are always set at the 85th percentile. And what that is you know, they take readings of how fast people are driving on the road, and then they take the 85th percentile. It's a very process-driven approach to establishing speed limits. Okay? That's basically how speed limits are derived. Do we have to have the speed limit set at the 85th percentile? Yes? No? Depends on who you're talking. You know, I guess there's a lot of truth to that. But in addition to that, who has the authority to set a speed limit in the state of Montana? Is it the feds, the states, the locals? This person, what's your name? Jean, she's nailed it. The Transportation Commission is the one who sets speed limits within the state. Okay? They have the ultimate authority. The only thing that we as Federal Highway require is that they follow the process to come to a speed through this process. And we get the 85th percentile, and then there's other factors that go into it. But does the commission have to use that speed? No, they don't. In fact, we've kind of had some issues once in a while because they've kind of just done some things that weren't. They felt that the process didn't consider certain things. Let me put it that way. And they changed the speed limit, and they have that right. They have that authority. So no, you don't have to be at the 85th percentile. And so, you know, and so we get into the environmental thing. Does it have to be within the right of way for a categorical exclusion? That the lowest, you know, level of environmental process? No, it doesn't. And so these are just some of the misconceptions that, even though that biking and walking have been around for, well, at least in legislation since even before 1998, but specifically in T21. So how do we move forward? And here's the catchy thing. Fast, of course, because the new transportation bill is the FAST Act. That's supposed to be fun. But yeah, you know, the reauthorization, and what's really nice is we finally have some stable funding. Finally have some stable funding. It's a 5-year bill, and so now we can actually move forward with projects that we planned. And it gives us a dedicated source of funding to know that we can actually move forward and build some projects that are good. Not only, well, for transportation users, no matter if you're in a car, a truck, bike, walk, doesn't matter. We've got some stable funding. And so, and you know, the projects still, even in the FAST Act, remain broadly eligible for a lot of different funding types. And so, you know, states, MPOs, all that, I do want to show you. This is in Federal Highway Safety website. I came across this, and what's really cool is it was it's some good information. It's a guide for communities, but the thing that I want you to focus on, there's 6 sections. It helps you kind of walk through some things. It's like, well, is there a problem? And it walks you through this. Are there types of pedestrian and bike problems? Ways to assess these. And then who can help? What can be done? I need more information. It's a great website. Federal Highway does have a lot of information, both in their environment, which we're going to hear from 2 lovely ladies after me. We're going to give you a lot more information than I'm going to, because I'm kind of just hitting high points. But there's a lot of really good information out there. Don't just focus on theirs, because that's one good piece. The safety side, which is, this is where I have, our safety side actually has a lot of really good information as well. So I encourage you. Pardon me?
What is that called?
Yeah, I got it. This is where the,
We can touch back.
here,
That's okay.
let me do this. Look at that. And I won't go on to the bike safe one. I can, but Lisa, you guys are going to be talking specifically about the bike
And
safe.
if you need any of these resources after the fact, we can get that to you.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
good. Yeah. And that was residence guide, so.
Yes.
You can also just look it up by that FHWA residence guide.
Are we good?
Thank you.
Okay. So, now that we've kind of laid the groundwork for our journey up this road, which for some that would be a challenge, for me it would be a climb. What's the big idea here? Why is this important? And I think our administrator said it very, very well, Greg Doe. At Federal Highway, our program is multifaceted. It's not laser focused. We've gathered the spectrum. That we've developed a broad range of tools and resources to foster ped and bike safety, and will continue to actively pursue that. So you've got our top person at the Federal Highway Administration making these statements. Do you think biking and walking is an important piece of what we do in the division and within the Federal Highway Administration? Yes, it is. But not only did he make a statement, Anthony Fox, the Secretary of Transportation, made this statement, and you see the placard on the front of his podium at a bike walk conference that he was at. And that's really hard to see. I'll read it to you. It says, safety is our highest priority. That commitment is the same regardless for which form of transportation people choose, including biking and walking. This initiative is aimed at reversing the recent rise in deaths and injuries among the growing number of Americans who bike and walk to work or reach public transportation or other important destinations. So he gets it. He gets that biking and walking is important. He's alarmed by this rise of traffic fatalities that people are experiencing biking and walking. And so he has made it a priority. And so you ask, well, what has he done? Or is this just lip service? to hear some about this. His initiative is called Safer People, Safer Streets. Melinda touched base on it. There was a nationwide assessment. And we did an assessment here in Montana. And there was a summary report of what came out of that. And one of the things, addressing some misconceptions, which we had talked about earlier. And I'll be honest with you, I only snipped out just a few of the misconceptions. There's tons of misconceptions within the biking and walking community. And then the ladders of opportunity. This is an area that the Secretary has taken on in his want to connect people to jobs and jobs to people. And when that occurs, it helps everyone. But the issue is not everybody owns a car. Not everybody can own a vehicle. So how do you develop a system that allows people to be connected to jobs, or jobs to be connected to people, if you can't provide a transportation mode that allows them to go to the job and to be present? Because you need to have biking and walking accessibility. You need to have the ability to get to transit so that you can get that job and so that you can provide. So we're about halfway there, okay? We're still moving forward. Some of the hard facts. The Secretary talked about his concern with the rising rate of fatalities. This is the stuff that's hard. And here's the hard facts from 04 to 13. I want to call your attention to the number of total fatalities that occurred in the U.S. Now, even one fatality is more than we should be accepting. And a little side note here and a plug for the Montana Department of Transportation. If you haven't, or if you are aware, please be educated about the department's Vision Zero. Because, you know, you ask people, well, how many fatalities should there be on the highways? And it's interesting because you get different responses from different people. You ask somebody, well, how many, you know, realistically, how many fatalities should there be? You know, and you get things from, well, 1,000 to 5,000 to whatever. So then the question that you have to ask that person is okay, who from your family should be one of them? Oh, no, that wasn't what I meant. Well, what do you mean that's not what you meant? Somebody's got to be in one of those, right? And it's someone's family. So any acceptability beyond 0 is not acceptable in my view. So back on the bike walk. So anyway, now look at the pedestrian fatalities. From 04 to 13, they've increased. And you see the percent of fatalities. This is, in my view, this is alarming. This is the hard stuff. This is the hard stuff. How do we develop projects? How do we encourage more biking and walking, but we do it safely? Okay? A few other facts. You know, on average, in 13, a person was killed every 2 hours and injured every 8 minutes. Pedestrian in 2013. And you can read some of these others. 69% of pedestrians killed in traffic were males. Higher proportion of males usually are, you know, so you ask yourself, well, why is that? I don't know. You know, males tend to maybe take a little more risk. I don't know. You know, you may have a better solution. The interesting one is alcohol. The driver and or pedestrian was reporting 49%. So alcohol is. If you're a male and you've been drinking and you're walking or biking, please be really careful because the odds are stacked against you. It's you know, I make it somewhat light, but it really is. It's a bad situation. Points you to, you know, 26% of pedestrian fatalities occur between 6 and basically 9 o'clock in the evening. Which is, I thought was an interesting statistic, and I'm trying to think, why is it between 6 and 9? What is that? Well, that's usually commuting time, right? There's more vehicles on the road. pedestrians are walking. It's a sobering fact. And now let's look at biking. Same thing. Total fatalities are the same. They're decreasing by 10,000 fatalities over this time period. But look at the bike fatalities. Now this is nationwide. They've gone up. Same with pedestrians. So you can see why the Secretary is so concerned with the rising rate of fatalities. We're making some headway on the vehicle side. As you see, the numbers have gone down in a 10-year period. But for biking and walking, they've increased. They're going against the trend. Some other facts, 68% of cyclists died in motor vehicles in 23, it was in urbanized areas. Large number. This was one that I guess I found interesting. Is over a 10-year period from 04 to 13, the average age of a cyclist killed in a motor vehicle crash has increased from 39 years to 44 years. I'm not sure I understand that one. Why is that? Maybe you have an idea. Again, alcohol. Either the motorist or the cyclist, 34% of the time in a fatality, there was alcohol. And continuing on, 24% of them, their PAC was well above. Sobering facts, but reality. So you say, okay, well these are national numbers. What does Montana look like? So you've got a nifty little dashboard on the Federal Highways website. So I thought, well, I'm going to look up and just see what Montana's numbers look like. So while it's loading, maybe. Here we go. These are the numbers for Montana. In 2010, there were 8. And now what I did for this is I combined pedestrian and cycling. Okay, so this is a combined number for both. There was 8 and 10, 16 and 11, 9 and 12. And this is the one that I'm having. There was 25 biking and walking fatalities in the state of Montana in 2013. And then for 2014, 12. But again, I go back to Vision Zero. Any fatality is unacceptable. And so as we develop our projects and as we move forward, let's do it safely and knowledgeably. So then as the question asks, well, okay, we have these fatalities, we've got some great ideas for things that we can do in our communities for biking and walking. But there's this little thing called money. That's just a little thing, money, Where can we get it? How do we get access to it? Who can we talk to about it? And so, again, Federal Highways website is a great resource for this because, and this is just a snapshot. Here are some of the things that, and let's go up just a little bit. Here are the different funding kinds. Tiger, FDA's Federal Transit Administration, CMAQ, HSIP. There's all these different funding categories, pots of money, if you will, okay? And then this matrix says, well, what is eligible for this? What pots of money could I possibly tap into? But here's the piece that reality needs to kind of step in as well. This is not just for biking and walking. This is also for all other pieces of transportation. And so there's going to be this ebb and flow, so to speak. Can we put all this money towards biking and walking? Reality is no. Should we put all the money towards vehicles and trucks? No. So there's a balance there that we all need to realize, that as we move forward, having a realistic view that we do need to provide transportation and transportation alternatives to not just vehicles, but also for biking and walking. And I encourage you to take a look at this website if it's of interest to you. All right. So, now that you've seen some of the Montana numbers, you've seen some of the funding, you can say, well, what can you do? This really turned out bad. It looked much better on the screen on my computer. What can you do today to improve biking and walking in Montana? My suggestion for you is to just be. Just be. Be involved, okay? Which you're doing today. Be educated. Be educated when you have that discussion. Understand where the funding sources are. Know what the rules are. Know that you don't have to follow the Green Book as long as you're not violating safety. Be realistic, and that's what I'm talking about. If you walk into the director's office and say, I want $100 million to build 4-foot shoulders on every road in the state, is that realistic? Is that realistic? Probably not. And last, be a leader. Be a leader, because we need leaders in the biking and walking community. And what's interesting is, I never saw this till I got here, but whoever put this together kind of took my idea, because on the bottom of this, they said, be visible, be safe. And I couldn't say it better. Be safe, no matter what you're doing. So, I like this quote from John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to do more, learn more, do more, and become more, you're a leader, okay? Good. Because that's what we need. We need leaders for biking and walking. And so, in the end, what are we all trying to reach? We want to create a safe and efficient transportation system for all users. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, very, very much for coming and giving updates about federal highways. I think he's probably presented a lot of information that many of us are not aware of, as well as the wealth of information and resources on the website. I know I oftentimes go to that website and look and get different resources, download different documents and things, so I think that was very helpful. And I think it's also staggering some of the statistics that he pointed out with fatalities and the safety on the roads, and that's something for each and every one of us to always keep in mind when we're out there on the roads. So, next up, we are going to drill into this a little bit more. Kevin kind of gave the overview, and now we have two other people from Federal Highways that are going to go more in depth. One is Lisa Applebee, and Lisa was recently took on the bicycle and pedestrian role at Federal Highways, and very sadly, we are now losing her to the Boise office. So that will be a big loss here, and I've worked with Lisa in planning the bike ped assessment last year, and she's been great to work with. We also have Shana Baker, who comes to us from Washington, D.C. I forgot my cheat sheet, but you're with the livability.
I lead the livability team. I'm with the office.
Right. So she oversees the multimodal livability and some of those things, which I'm sure she'll tell you more about. Coincidentally, I was out in D.C. in March for the National Bike Summit at this evening gala on the last night, and got to talking to a couple ladies. One of who was from Federal Highways. Turns out it was Shana's boss, so that was really interesting. And had the opportunity to thank her for sending Shana out here. So I'll turn it over to you two.
Good. Well, good morning. Again, my name is Shana Baker. I'm with the Federal Highway Administration, and I am in the Office of Clean Environment. And we are responsible for doing a lot of the good things that Kevin shared with you on today. I lead an awesome team of transportation professionals that are responsible for a lot of the work that we will go into, a lot of the resources. My team plays a critical role in working with the Office of the Secretary of Transportation with the Mayor's Challenge and a lot of the initiatives that you see that comes out of the Office of the Secretary of Transportation. I work with a phenomenal group of people. I wish I could stand here and take all the credit, but I cannot. The team that I work with, they're an awesome group of people. In addition to looking at bicycle and pedestrian activities, we also focus on livability, which is about quality of life. Bicycle and pedestrian activities is a critical part of quality of life. We also deal with topics such as context-sensitive solutions or context-sensitive design and environmental justice, and the funding program that Kevin mentioned, the Transportation Alternatives Program. So that's just really briefly some of the things that we do in my office and on the livability team. Kevin laid an awesome foundation of the things that we will get into more in more detail. Lisa and I, we are co-leading this presentation. I will talk about the USDOT initiatives. I'll focus a little bit more on ladders of opportunity. Is anybody familiar with that term, or have you heard of ladders of opportunity? Okay, great. A couple of people have. I'll focus a little bit more on that. And the connectivity measures, that's a big piece of ladders of opportunity. Safer people, safer streets. I know you've all heard of that because Missoula is leading in that effort with the Safer People, Safer Streets initiative. Then Lisa will focus on some FHWA activities and resources. We'll have some take-home messages for you, and then I'll conclude with what is next. Ladders of opportunity, what is it about? Ladders of opportunity is about connecting communities to opportunities. The mayor said it so nicely today. When you have bicycle and pedestrian facilities, you're able to connect people to communities. You're able to connect people to job opportunities. And they also provide an opportunity for revitalization in many communities. When local governments make transportation infrastructure decisions, a part of what they're doing is connecting communities, or what they should be doing is looking at ways to connect communities, especially in areas where communities have been disconnected. We have been, early on when the highway system was built, a lot of communities were disconnected. However, because of NEPA and a lot of the other good federal guidance and regulations, we are more conscientious of that, and so are the local transportation agencies as well. And we're looking for opportunities to reconnect communities, as well as making sure when transportation decisions are made, they're looked at in a very holistic manner, not just to be able to get people from point A to point B, but to be able to make sure that people can get to essential services. I think the mayor said it so nicely. Everyone doesn't own a car. Everyone doesn't own a car, but people need transportation choices, and bicycle and pedestrian facilities presents that option for them. Connectivity measures is a part of looking at ladders of opportunity. There's been a lot of work that we at FHWA has done, as well as the Office of the Secretary of Transportation, and I have to have my cheat sheet for this because I want to make sure that I'm giving you all the good information. There is a connectivity white paper that's available on the DOT's website. The white paper highlights specific measures that are being used by local governments and how they're measuring connectivity. In addition to this white paper, in April of 2015, the US DOT hosted a DOT Connectivity Summit. They invited local governments, transportation practitioners from across the United States to come and to participate in this forum and to talk about ways that they are connecting their communities. They had a great opportunity to share their experiences, and that forum is also documented and lessons learned, and that's available on the opportunity connect on our website as well. This is on the DOT's website. There's a Fast Lane blog that talks about connectivity. So if you're interested in knowing more about connectivity, if you're interested in knowing what are specific performance measures that communities are using across the United States to provide connectivity, I encourage you to look at these resources. In addition to that, FHWA has several activities that we have been doing that's promoting connectivity. The first one is a white paper, Pursuing Equity in Pedestrian and Bicycle Planning. I do believe that was mentioned on yesterday, and I'm personally excited about this because this is one of my babies. And it will be coming out really, really soon, probably within the next couple of weeks. This paper specifically focuses on strategies that communities can take to look at transportation equity and bicycle and pedestrian planning. Gives you lots of good research, stats. This is why we're doing it. It makes the case for it. But in addition to making the case for it, it also gives you real life experiences of what communities are doing to address equity and bicycle and pedestrian planning. That document isn't out yet, but it's coming out really soon. That's on my quick hurry up to-do list that I couldn't do before I came out to Montana. The second thing that we're are focusing on, there's a white paper on the linkage between ladders of opportunity and bicycle and pedestrian transportation. This will be rolled out as a part of FHWA's strategic bicycle and pedestrian agenda. So we'll talk a little bit more later on the presentation about that. So that'll be another resource that'll be coming out shortly as well. Then the last activity that I want to talk about is the Governor's Institute on Community Design Project. FHWA has been working with EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and working with the Governor's Institute. And they are also looking at a white paper to provide measures, what our communities doing that help people get to essential services. Again, connectivity measures. Why are we focusing on this? Because there's such a need where people want to know, how are people measuring connectivity? What are they doing to look at it? So there's some things in the works that we'll be having, that will be unveiled shortly, that FHWA is doing. The white paper, also the white paper that's a part of the Bike Ped strategic agenda, and then finally, the Governor's Institute work will probably come out during the fall, so later during the year, but the other two documents will be out in the spring. Ladder Step. Ladder Step is a major part of what the Secretary has been focusing on with connecting communities. There have been 8 communities that were awarded or that have been designated as Ladder Step pilot programs. And in these communities, what we're doing at the DOT is working with other federal agencies and local agencies and providing technical assistance to those local cities by convening public-private entities to advance community revitalization projects. It may sound like it's a really light thing, but it's a major thing when you go into a community and you're talking about transportation and you're talking about accessing FHWA funds. A lot of people do not realize our funds go straight to the state DOT, that we do not give a city a direct award. And so being able to educate local governments and being able to educate advocacy groups so that they understand the flow of our funds, and not only the flow of our funds, but the transportation planning process, which is critical as well. That's part of the work that we've been doing with the Ladder Step project. There are the cities that we're doing this Ladder Step work is Atlanta, Baltimore, Baton Rouge, Charlotte, Indianapolis, Phoenix, and Richmond. And each of the projects look different. Some are more transit-oriented and some are not as transit-oriented. So it's a variety of projects that we're working on through the Ladder Step Transportation Empowerment Pilot. We've all heard about the US DOT's Bike Ped assessment. This was a major feat that we did. And I can honestly say that because we stepped out of our realms and we worked as one DOT. We worked with the Federal Rail Administration. We worked with NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, and FTA, and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. We all came together, not only at headquarters in Washington, D.C., but in the local, in the states as well, to do the bicycle pedestrian assessment. And I think that was a major feat because one assessment was done in each state throughout the United States, including Puerto Rico and Hawaii as well. FHWA led 36 of those assessments, and I think that's good for us because sometimes we get a bad rap. I think that Kevin did a great job to let you know that we are really engaged and we got it. We've realized it's not just about cars. Our blood does not just run as asphalt. And you will see this in a lot of the good work that we're doing at FHWA. And as you know, you participated in assessment as well. There is an assessment, and this is a part of the Secretary's initiative, the Safer People, Safer Streets initiative that was announced 2 years ago at the Pro Walk, Pro Bike Conference, Pro Place as well, in Pittsburgh. So this was rolled out there, and we have been doing, because of the local governments, have been doing an awesome job of keeping these things going. This slide, basically, I want to emphasize that there is a report that's available that lets you know that what was done across the country was documented. You can see the challenges, the successes, and the next steps of how to keep this moving. I encourage you to take a look at the report because sometimes we think, yes, we do live in a very diverse country. However, there's some of the same themes throughout the United States when you're looking at bicycle and pedestrian facilities and the challenges as well. So I would encourage you to look at that document just to learn a little bit more about what was accomplished during those bike ped assessments. Again, it gives you a larger perspective. The Mayor's Challenge for the Safer People, Safer Streets, Missoula is a part of that. These are the focus areas for those, for the Mayor's Challenge. It was not only a call, the Mayor's Challenge was not only a call for the local government to make a political statement and stand up bicycle pedestrian safety, but it was a challenge to action. And so the mayors, there were over 200, I want to say over 230 cities that signed up to be a part of this, and these are the focus areas. So yes, they've made this political or this public statement about in support of bike ped activities. However, they've identified specific areas based on what that local mayor chose that they wanted to focus on to build bicycle and pedestrian safety. In addition to that, we've had lots of webinars. We have provided technical assistance to the local governments that have been focused in these areas as well. So throughout it, it's just not you're out there rah-rah, shish kebab. It's us giving you resources to help you meet the goals that you have set. I have some good news about the Mayor's Challenge. So there will be awards that we'll be giving. There's a competition for mayors that are currently participating in this challenge. Cities can self-nominate, hint, hint. You don't need somebody else to nominate you. The nomination process is June through July. All you need to do is describe the work that you've done during the Mayor's Challenge. Awardees will receive recognition at the Mayor's Challenge Summit that will be held in September, and there are other perks that will be along with that. Nice picture taking, nice physical awards will be given out as well. Awards will be considered for work related to the 7 challenge activities that was on the previous slide, ladders of opportunity, showing strong cases of how communities are being connected, and for active engagement in challenge events. So applications open June 1, and they'll close on July the 15th. Consider someone here from the city of Missoula self-nominated. FHWA activities. As I said, we've done a phenomenal job. I have to toot our own horn on this. sometimes we get this bad rap. We've done a phenomenal job. Lisa's gonna take over from here with producing a lot of good resources, of what we believe are good resources. Here's the test. Why do we believe that they're good resources? Because we've heard from our stakeholders, not just state DOTs and NPOs, but from advocacy groups as well, saying the types of resources that are needed to really make the push to continue the momentum that has been started with this administration as it pertains to bicycle and pedestrian safety. So this is one of our major focus areas. We're doing work of dealing with design flexibility. I'll talk a little bit more about a great document that's coming out, bicycle and pedestrian data collection. That's a key part of what needs to be done and what is happening. We have a bike ped count pilot project that FHWA has funded. We're looking at equity and ladders of opportunity and quality of life and livability. So we have a lot of good activities, and I'm going to turn it over to Lisa so that she can go deeper into some of the resources.
Thank you, Shana. So you can tell we're pretty excited about all the great work we're doing, and I hope you will be too. We're really going to encourage you guys to get out there and look at these resources. As Shana said, we've done some amazing work, and this is out there for your use. The more educated all of you are, the more valuable you are when you come to the table to talk with transportation officials, and the more you can influence the outcome. So some of the resources. This one, Separated Bike Lane Planning and Design Guide, came out last year, right about the time we did our assessment last May, and this is a pretty big deal because this is one of the first times FHWA acknowledged that there are other sources of information to be used when it comes to planning and designing bike facilities. We've usually stuck to our AASHTO Green Book. You'll hear engineers talk about the AASHTO Green Book. We love our Green Book. Well, now all of a sudden we're saying, okay, go ahead and look at other sources such as NACTO, National Association of City Transportation Officials. We're encouraging innovation and flexibility for one of the first times. So get into this manual and really encourage. We'll look at a couple more slides here. Let's see, how do I get this to go?
Just forward button.
So planning elements in this document. This is where it all begins, planning. And for folks, advocacy groups in particular, this is where you really need to get involved and start talking to your transportation officials and letting them know what your communities need. What makes sense in your communities? Do you need separated bike lanes? Do you need pathways? Do you need sidewalks? Do you need ADA facilities or curb ramps? This kind of manual will give you more information about how that process works so that you can talk the talk. One such tool in this manual is the flexible delineators, low-cost option to create a physical barrier, a vertical barrier between the rider and the driver. These have been used quite a bit because they're low cost and highly visible, and it may work in your community. So the highlight of this guide, though, is we're encouraging flexibility and innovation. So as part of that, what we need to determine is what works. So we want to get data. Engineers, planners, we like data. So we're going to collect that data. We're going to find out what works. We're going to continue our research at headquarters and look to the states to do more research and collect that data and bring that in, build capacity, build more pedestrian and bicyclist capacity, and then evaluate what works, what really works. And until we know what works, certainly FHWA is going to continue to be open to new ideas. Again, I encourage you to get into this manual. There is so much information, and take a look. We will make it all available. This information we can send on to Melinda. So next, newer guide coming out is a guidebook for evaluating and establishing tracking pedestrian and bicycle performance measures. So this is part of a larger push by the Federal Highway Administration to move toward and implement a performance-based approach to to carrying out our federal program, our federal highway program. And so having the performance measures for bicycle and pedestrians as part of the big picture of performance measures in transportation means that bikes and peds are part of the integrated system and really matter. So we need to continue to measure our bicycle and pedestrian impacts in our transportation system, and one of which is health. Another recent resource that came out is a case study in delivering safe, comfortable, and connected pedestrian and bicycle networks. And so this resource has case studies throughout the country, including Montana. In this, we have the 38-mile Bitterroot path that goes Lolo to Hamilton, right? And that's in here as well. And all of these case studies highlight the principles of networks, connected networks. We know throughout our transportation system that we have missing links, that connection, that ladders of opportunity. We want to make those connections. I'm pretty excited about this particular resource because I think this is going to be a very useful tool. This is incorporating on-road bicycle networks into resurfacing projects. Again, this is an opportunity for you to get out there with your transportation folks and talk to them. When you see resurfacing projects, they're not very glamorous. You go out, mill and overlay, put a little bit more asphalt out there. But when they do that, they take off all the striping. So all of a sudden you have a blank slate. You can start fresh. You can go in here and say, how about a road diet? How about a bike lane? How about a narrower lane? You can do some different things. And this guidebook will give you some ideas about how to talk their language. You want to make an impact, you need to learn the language, talk the language, and learn the processes and where you can get involved. And here we have resources underdeveloped. Shana's going to take that one on.
Great. The one piece that I do want to add about the resources that Lisa shared, they're written for a broad audience. It's not engineer focused. I am a planner by training. I have a master's in urban planning. So one of the comments that I have given when I review these documents is, I don't understand what you're saying. So if I don't understand it, how can we publish something and make it a public-facing document that someone else that may not be a planner, that may just be the general public, because our documents are available to the general public, they should be able to pick up the document and understand the intent and how to maneuver. And I am proud to say that these documents are simple. The separated bike lane does get technical. It does get technical, but if you can follow the beginning, you're in a good place. So I'm really excited about that piece too, because sometimes we talk in a way without acronyms where we only understand each other in the transportation world and not those outside of our world. But our documents aren't like that. So two resources that I would like to briefly talk about that are under development. One is called Achieving Multimodal Networks, Applying Design Flexibility and Reducing Conflicts, and the Strategic Agenda for Pedestrian and Bicycle Transportation. So with the Multimodal Networks document, this document highlights ways that planners and engineers can apply design flexibility found in current national guidance. They also give great case studies, not 10 pages for one area, but you can find a really nice, or you will find, because it's not public yet, I read it on the way out here, you will find really concise information about how different areas, rural as well as urban areas, are applying design flexibility. It will include 24 design topics, and they're organized by themes. And so you'll see transit in there, you'll see a little bit of everything once this document is published. This is coming out real soon too. Can't give you an exact date, but we're in the process of looking at drafts and making sure that it is a concise document. Here are some of the things that you'll see in this document. The last document, and it will not be the last of all that FHWA is producing, is a strategic agenda for pedestrian and bicycle transportation. And so what this document will do is lay the framework for the activities that we're undertaking pertaining to bicycle and pedestrian safety. So there will be 4 goals in this document. It'll talk about connecting networks. And when we talk about connected networks, we're talking about connected bicycle and pedestrian facilities. There will be a goal that will focus on safety. There's a goal that's focused on equity and activity. All of these goals will include action items that will focus on capacity building and training, the policy side of it, the data, what's the data, and the research as well. The one piece that I want to point out about the Bike Ped Performance Measures Guide, there are data sources that are in there. So it doesn't just tell you this is what you should be measuring, but it tells you here are some resources that you should consider as well, which I think is important. So our strategic agenda will be a forward-facing document that will lay out the framework of how we move forward in these areas in the years to come. And so we're excited about moving that forward. This is a current document that we have. It's called the Transportation Alternatives Program Performance Management Guidebook. As Lisa said, we are in an environment now where we are being held accountable for the way that we spend money, not just at the federal level, but at the local level too. You just don't want to do something because it feels good and it makes me warm and fuzzy, but we're making decisions based on the performance. We're getting the best bang for our buck. So one way that we've been looking at this is through our Transportation Alternatives Program. The name changed under the FAST Act. It's just called Transportation Alternatives. However, the eligibility did not change. You have to take that up with Congress of why, I don't know. But the program hasn't changed. What this document does is, it's not required that you have performance management measures for the Transportation Alternatives Program. However, FHWA wanted to be forward-thinking and saying, let's look at ways that we can identify specific performance measures that supports this program. And so this document gives you data sources, also highlights what other areas are doing to measure the effectiveness of their Transportation Alternatives Program. Lisa.
So Public Roads magazine recently published 2 great articles. The first is Design Flexibility. That was in a more current article. And then not too long ago, they also published an article, and these are fairly short, concise articles on the separated bike lanes. So grab a copy of those, and I have a copy of the one for the separated bike lanes, and we'll have that at the round table if anyone wants to take a look at that. Again, great resources. These are really quick reads. You can tell you have a ton of information here, right? You can see yourself studying this for the next year. But that would make, these are real nice and concise. So here's the resource page and the website links for the information on misconceptions, and also that table that Kevin brought up. This is a really great resource. It really gives you all the different pots of money and what you can spend those on. And so that's really helpful to take a look at. When you have a question, any of us have a question about can we use these funds for this kind of project. Some more resources out of our Office of Safety. They have the bikepedsafe.org site, and there's the PedSafe and the BikeSafe websites. And these are the front pages and the portals into all kinds of additional information. The countermeasures, you can see we have countermeasures, case studies, resources and guidelines. Again, you can spend quite a bit of time on this, but oftentimes you can skim these documents and get a good information. The bicycle and pedestrian road safety audit guidelines. So basically last year when we did that bike ped assessment in Helena, we were following similar guidelines to the bicycle road safety audits. Here's another really fun, I really like this website in particular because you get on this, you can see it has little icons for roundabouts, rumble strips, everybody's favorite, and you can click on any of the icons, and then it opens up a whole other page, and you get a whole bunch of information. And so this is a great link. Also, you can see here at the bottom of the page, there's the address. The Road Diet Informational Guide is also a recent guide. I'm trying to see what the date was on that. I have a copy of that. We'll have it at the round table as well. This is a wonderful resource. Great information's coming out of this. What they're finding is if you take a two-way, four-lane road and switch it to a three-lane road, so 2 lanes, 2 directions, and a center turn lane, add bike lanes, add parking, things like that, you can reduce crashes by anywhere from 19 to 47%. That's pretty significant. That says, in certain places, a road diet's a great solution. Then the traffic monitoring guide. This guide's been around a while, but this is the first version in 2013 where they've added non-motorized users. So this first paragraph was pretty interesting. I'm gonna have to get up close. It says that even though both modes of travel, bicycle and ped, preceded automobiles, this is the first time they've considered monitoring the bikes and peds in this guideline. So, baby steps, we're getting there, we're moving forward. And what gets counted matters. What gets counted matters. So we have a whole bunch of these pilot projects out there. You can see all sorts of places in the country. Here are counting projects, some temporary, some permanent. And I believe we have some folks here in Montana that have counters and are doing some counting projects in Montana, even though you're not on the list. I think there's a little bit of work going on there, and I hope you'll look into that. Capacity building, again, more websites. We have the Pedestrian Bicycle Information Center, Safe Routes to Schools, or Safe Routes, and then the National Highway Institute, which offers training classes. And I believe I saw that, Linda, maybe you know, DOT, or Sherry, Sheila. You guys have, are the classes coming back? You have the bicycle and pedestrian design classes are coming up. If you have a chance to go to those, they're really informative classes. So the take home is that design matters, design details matter, data informs the design, comfort matters. We all know that if we're out there walking and bicycling, we know that. Design for the behavior you want to see, prioritize seamless and efficient movement, and focus on connected networks. Ladders of opportunity, connected networks. And I'll pass it on to Shana.
And the final thing is, what are we going to continue to do at FHWA? We're going to continue to engage the Mayor's Challenge cities. As I mentioned, there's an opportunity for you to self-nominate, and there will be another convening of the mayors that are participating, or their staff that's participating in the Mayor's Challenge in September. We are facilitating assessment follow-up events. And so there have been some of our division offices that have reached out to us that said, we need some specific thing, like money, to help us with some follow-up activities. It's extremely limited. I wish I could say I'm from the federal government, I'm here to help, and I have a big bag of money, but I don't, unfortunately. However, we are providing assistance, helping even with events like this. Matter of fact, Dan Goodman just participated in a summit very similar to this in West Virginia, the beginning part of last week, where they had advocacy groups and transportation practitioners come out and talk about the same thing. So it's across the United States where this bike ped is really taking on a new life, and it's of interest to many people. We are going to continue to work with implementing our 2016 Strategic Implementation Plan, the document that highlighted the networks, connected networks throughout the United States. That was as a result of our 2015 strategic implementation plan. There's lots of good information in our strategic implementation plan that has a focus on bike ped. We're looking at the number of state DOTs and MPOs that are actually using these resources. We're counting that. We're also looking at what are MPOs and state DOTs doing to make programmatic changes. So it's one thing to say, yeah, I read your resource, but it's a different thing to say, I read your resources, and here are the changes that we're going to make based on what we've learned. We are publishing additional resources, more to come. There are a lot more resources that I didn't mention that we didn't include in the PowerPoint presentation. We fund the Pedestrian and Bicycle Information Center. Has anybody heard of PBIC? Okay, a couple of people. We provide funds to them, so the great work that they do, we are one of their funders, and they're doing a lot of work for us. A mapping book will be coming out as well. And then finally, the strategic agenda that I mentioned, we're working on finalizing that document because, as I said, it will lay the framework for what we have accomplished and what we want to continue to accomplish in years to come. This is just my personal belief. What we've started through this administration, through Secretary Fox, I believe that it will continue. I believe that we have raised such an awareness of bicycle pedestrian safety at a grassroots level that we have to continue what we're doing. I can't believe that people will go back in their homes and say, oh, we have a new Secretary of the Department of Transportation, I no longer want to bike or walk. No, I think that this grassroots level, this activity, the focus is taking place and people want more, and I think that's a great thing. So, points of contact, as I said, I will direct you to the right person on my staff that can give you specific information, especially if you have technical questions about a lot of those documents. Lisa's here right now.
Until Monday.
Until Monday. But we are more than happy to help facilitate any of the questions, get you some answers that you may be looking for. So thank you so much. I am so excited, as you can tell, just to be in Montana. It's my first time here. It's a wonderful state. Love the great things that you've been doing. And one reason why I wanted to come, because I saw the great things that you've been doing through Tiger funding and through using of your funds. I was like, I can't miss the opportunity. Our travel is limited, but it's great just to be here. So thank you very much, and continue to keep up the good work.
Regarding federal highways and anything that you've heard today. Lots of questions. Okay, I have you prepared. Lisa.
I have a question, maybe more for you two, but you talked about sort of your data and your count data. I just wondered if, in addition to your count data, where you could say, yes, we made this infrastructure improvement, now we have more cyclists and pedestrians, have you done any sort of qualitative or started to ask people, hey, we're out here biking and we're not just people from 2 streets over and now it's more convenient, but we're actually biking because if this wasn't here, we'd be in a car still, or we feel safer, or is there any plans, or do you have data on things like that?
Yeah, one of the slides that was up was for the bike ped pilot program, and so what FHWA did was we identified the MPOs that needed a little help, that did not have bike count project or bike count data programs in existence. So we gave them money to find, you tell us wherever you want to install this data, do it, and to help them use their data. We aren't looking at that per se, but there is a next level connectivity research that's going to, I think, go a little more detail in that, but the bike ped pilot program doesn't, because they're newbies. They're MPOs that haven't had a bike count program up, don't know what to do. We're offering technical assistance in addition to the money. But the connectivity, and I'll have to follow up with you on the specifics of it. We do have a research project that's literally in development. The statement of work has not been written, where we're looking at taking the connectivity aspect to the next level. To say, okay, yes, there's connectivity here, but how is it coming along? Where are people coming from? What's the next level? So I can definitely get your card and follow up with some general information about that research project, but that's not through our bike ped pilot piece.
And I do believe some communities and some projects are doing that sort of thing where they send out surveys afterwards, or they do before and after sort of analysis and take, ask the public, how is this working? Is this working? And demonstration projects, I know I'm heading to Boise again, and I know they did a demo project right in downtown, and they went out and said to people, well, what did you think? They didn't like it, it was green boxes. They took them back out. And so they went back to the drawing board. So things like that, where they're going back out. The thing that's going on in the nation is that the public is more and more involved in the process. And transportation officials know that now. I mean, back in the day, we all sat in our drawing room with our big, thick glasses and did our thing. And now we know we can't do that anymore. We have to get out and talk to the people and find out what works. So we are doing more of that, I think.
Yeah, I want to send you a link too, because I know that our main division office took the lead in pulling together their MPOs in the state DOT, and they did a like an informal peer exchange, and they looked at the data pieces, but they documented it. And I'll send you the link just to see if they had the discussion of how they went back, if they went back and talked to the community. But I know a lot of their discussion was where are people counting, positioning people, especially for areas where there wasn't an automated counter. So I definitely want to get your business card. Thanks.
Great, Bill.
What is the FHWA comparable design manual to the AASHTO Pedestrian Facilities Guide? Because that guide was updated, I think, in 2014. It's a great resource, but it costs. And since I'm retired, that's a big cost. So what's FHWA's comparable document? Or can FHWA just get me that for free?
I'm not sure about the cost. Kevin.
As you said, AASHTO is the standard with which we adhere to. Just like the Green Book, that's not the Federal Highway Administration's book. It's AASHTO's book, and we adopt that. Similarly with the pedestrian guide. Maybe to help you out, some of the resources that Lisa and Shannon talked about, I don't know if it's maybe going to get you exactly what you want, but there's resources out there that are going to tap into a lot of these things that may give you that information. And from a funding standpoint, as Shana said, all of our funds flow through the state DOT. And so, there's really no mechanism for us just to start handing out books.
I'm looking at that comparable guide, because the FHWA website is wonderful.
It is, but since AASHTO develops the guides, it would be redundant for us to do a guide as well. And so that's why AASHTO develops the guides, and then in cooperation with Federal Highway, we adopt that so that we are more efficient and effective with the scarce resources, i.e. dollars, that we do get. And so that's why we adopt AASHTO's guides rather than developing our own.
Yeah, it's just hard to say that we have one comparable guide. I think that we have different resources. But I'm currently leading a project with ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, where we're updating it was a thoroughfare, context-sensitive solution, thoroughfare guidebook that they developed many years ago. We're updating that document, and it will have a multimodal focus. And so, and this is why I struggle with it, because I can't say it's one guide that we have. We have an old document that I want to say that FHWA developed in the 80s, highway design flexibility document. It's a lot of resources, but what we're trying to do is remain relevant, and as our context of the way we do business change is making sure that we have guides that are addressing where we are now, the multimodal aspect. Because of highway design flexibility, I don't think has that multimodal aspect as what we're trying to do now. So it's hard to say just one comparable resource.
Other questions? Ben?
Thank you very much for presenting. This is really great to see FHWA both in the state and DC level saying, hey, there is flexibility, there are ways to do this. I'm curious how you get that information passed down internally, because there are times when I'm on listservs and things, and I saw the separated bike lane guide come out, and I sent it to some of our local DOT folks saying, hey, have you guys seen this? And they're like, no, we haven't seen it yet. So how do you get that information spread internally and shared and really appreciated by all of the different levels of staff?
Sure. So we take an approach where the first people that we inform are our division offices. And so we let them know when something's coming out, and then in our email, we typically ask, please share this information with your local stakeholders. In addition to that, we have staff that's a part of APBP. We'll put something on their listserv. We have a HE Digest, a Human Environment Digest, that I encourage everyone to sign up for, because we list there are different topics where we're looking at livability, bike ped, environmental justice, safety, where we include these announcements as well. We've been working with the Office of the Secretary of Transportation as we produce this for them to send out information to the Mayor's Challenge too. What you're saying is not new. When we've met with the advocacy groups with the Office of the Secretary of Transportation, they're like, you're doing great things, but how do we find out about it? And we're encouraging people to go to our redeveloped bike ped website, because when something's posted, we put it there as well, where we're trying to make sure that things are easier to find versus you need a PhD to maneuver the website to figure out where it is. And like, it's a resource, stick it there as well. So to answer your question, we do that through our division offices. We do that through the HE Digest, which I encourage you to go on the FHWA's Livability website. There's a link to subscribe to that. So if you're subscribed to it, when the documents come out, you'll see that as well. We do that work with the Office of the Secretary of Transportation, and we depend on our division offices to share that information with stakeholders too. And we use the various listservs. Safe Routes to School has a listserv, Transportation Alternatives Program has a listserv, and because staff are a part of the APP, we've been using their listserv to announce some of this stuff as well.
The other thing is you have your DOT, state DOT point of contact, bicycle pedestrian point of contact, Michelle is over here, and Sheila as well, and then you'll have a division point of contact for bike ped issues. So call your division office, call your DOT, get a hold of those folks, and you'll get your resources.
Other questions? Oh, you're taking it too easy on this one. Kathy?
And in terms of the Mayor's Challenge, is that something that's done and going to have these awards, or is it something that's going to be ongoing, or can you get in if you haven't gotten in yet?
Sure, no, the deadline has expired for people that have not registered. And so September will be a culminating event to bring the mayors together. So it's over. It was extended because of the interest from other cities. So it was extended, but to my knowledge right now, they're not asking for more people to sign up. Right. However, people can continue to do those, to focus on those 7 focus areas. And when you look at the focus areas and the information that we provided, there are resources that are existing for that. There are resources.
That website's going to still be up.
To my knowledge, it will be, yes, yes. But there may be changes when we get a new administration. I cannot speak to what a new administration may want to do. So right now, definitely available. I can't see just taking it down. It has a lot of good information on that website.
So I'm excited about all these great resources too, and I understand this training is coming to Montana. I think through the state DOT, the NIH, the bicycle training. But I'm curious how all these resources, the separated design guide, are being incorporated into that training. Are they part of it?
I'm not sure. You know, I took it a year or 2 back, and I was wondering that myself, whether or not they've incorporated some of the new data. I would think so. NHI does. They try to stay right up on top of things when they come out. And so you may find if you go to this class and you went to the past class 2 years ago, that they are covering new information, but it might not even be in their slides yet. They may just be talking about it, or they add slides that weren't there last time. So I think you'll see that they'll certainly be trying to add that stuff on the go.
Other questions? Norma?
So, I am a social scientist researcher. And
Can you speak
have-
up a little bit so everyone can hear
You have data up on your slide, that you use data. So, from somebody at the university, and Jen is also here, university here, what can we do? What kind of data is needed for our state, our community, that will help all these advocates get the funding that they need and still provide, the correct information?
Yeah, I think it's a collaborative process, and the division office jumped in as well. I think it's working with the local governments to figure out if they're looking at performance measures, what performance measures are they using, and do they have the data? I think that's a great partnership to be able to work with the university to say, we don't have this data, can you help us find data sources as well? I mean, that's hard just to say, you should be doing this, when it's based on the community's goals and what specifically that community may be trying to measure. I think that's really important, is to pair up, whether it's the NPO or whether it's a city government or county government, what are you trying to measure? Do you have the tools in place? Do you know what the data sources are? And yes, use FHWA document as, these are just some ideas. But people may have other ways that they want to measure things that may not be documented in the BikePed Performance Measures Guidebook. So to answer your question, I really believe it's working with the local governments to get an understanding of what their goals are in order to measure it. But I think it's a great partnership. It's a great partnership because you're right. Educational institutions have those data sources.
Well, and recently, MDT used the university, used interns, wasn't it the interns that we did for the ADA transition plan? I think that was a really good example of going out and working with a local educational institution and finding interns, summer interns, to go out and do data counts for us to find out what was out on the ground for curb ramps and ADA facilities. So that's one example of a little collaboration that's occurred in this state. So. And with performance measures, I highlighted just the one there, the health side of it. So there is an opportunity for coming up with new data for health and how it connects to our transportation system. And it's probably the missing link in how we consider transportation in this country.
Because sometimes, I mean, my experience, which is very little in terms of all of this stuff, we just happened, and where's Sarah? Somewhere. But anyway, we just happened to do this study a couple of years ago about bicycle tourism in the state, and that has received more attention and been used more than anything else. We just kind of stumbled upon it. So my thought is, well, what are the needs so we don't need to stumble and then use the data, that we proactively provide information that can be used, because it was used so much to get funding. It helped with the Lolo connecting trail. It's just helped with a million things in this state. I want to keep doing that kind of stuff.
That's why I think.
But I don't know. You guys have to let us know what you need, and that doesn't mean that we just can go out and do all this free. But if everybody's collaborating, we can have some great stuff going on in this state.
And if you want to see it from a national perspective, FHWA or the DOT funds UTCs, University Transportation Centers. And so there are specific universities that have been designated as UTCs, and some of them look at bicycle pedestrian activities. There's a website where you can see the specific type of research that they are undertaking as well. But again, that's from a larger national perspective, but it's a great partnership to work in the local community. And as you said, unfortunately, it's not free. A lot of stuff isn't free nowadays. But to be able to provide that fund, that gives the basis for funding. That helps. That helps.
Yes, back here.
Hey, I'm so glad for this line of questioning because we're new too. And I still can't connect the dots. So is it that the data is required to apply for one of these grants?
No.
Is that why you're stressing the data, or is it the data that informs the needs of the community? I mean, what happens here? Can you tell a story or something so I see how do you get a new bicycle path for your community?
Sure. So in the BikePed arena, what happens typically is that there's some type of data count. You need to know how many people are using your system, and Lisa definitely jump in. as well. How many people are walking? How many people are biking? And in those areas where that's occurring, are there facilities that are accommodating them? There are some areas where people end up making a goat path, where it's literally grass and you've just watched that people are walking here, but you need to be able to take some type of count to know how many people are accessing those areas to make improvements to the area. The funding and the data for the FHWA funds that you saw, that's a little bit different. The data is the basis for you to make your decisions, you being the local government. Because how are you making a decision on where to put a bicycle facility? Is it based on usage, or is it based on I'm connected to the mayor and I live in this neighborhood? So the data says a lot when you can go back and say, no, we have 1,000 pedestrians that are using this facility. We need upgrades, or it needs to be expanded, or we have 10,000 cyclists that comes through here in 1 year. That's one thing. To access the funds, you saw the funding chart that Kevin put up there, CMAT, Transportation Alternatives Program. I want to say it was a Surface Transportation Program. Those funds are accessed through the DOT. That's not a grant program. The one grant program that was up there was the Tiger Grant Program.
Oh, I missed his presentation.
Oh, okay,
That's
I'm
the
sorry.
one.
It was a Tiger Grant program.
So then the data is used for those programs.
And the data is
pots of
used for-
money are available for Montana.
And the data is used for planning purposes as well. That's the foundation of doing your plans for the planning purposes as well. Lisa and Kevin?
Yeah, the other thing I would say is sometimes it's not about data. Sometimes you have, as a community, you go to your local government, you go to your MPO, and you go to the DOT and you say, there's a need. If the facility was here, it would get used. And that's where sometimes it's hard to make your case, because nobody's using the facility because it's a 45, 55 mile an hour, 4-lane highway. So then it becomes a matter of a conversation with your governments. I mean, it's government by the people, for the people. We got to get out there and let our folks, our transportation agencies know there's a need. And that's where it's at. And then the data helps inform.
Yes, Jessica.
If I could, so here's the elephant in the room, okay? It's a zero-sum game. That's what it is. The state DOT gets X dollars. They don't get any more. They've got needs on the highway side. People are dying. We've got needs on the bike and walk side. Data allows you to have that discussion, as Lisa said and as Shana said. It puts you in a position that you can have a discussion to say, there are needs. And they're needs because we have data that shows that we have needs. People are dying. I showed you that. But people are dying on the highways as well. So when you have a set pot of funds, okay? And when my slide of just be, one of the topics was be realistic, that's where we need to have that discussion. Because if you walk in and tell the director, who will be here shortly, say, we need $100 million to improve biking and walking in this state. Well, we have about a 1.8, almost 2 billion B, not just B, but this $1 billion backlog of needs for highway improvements in this state today. It's a zero-sum game. You have to realize that. We have to be realistic. That doesn't mean we shouldn't ask and work with local communities, local MPOs, the state DOT, to start incorporating better biking and walking facilities as we start designing these projects. That's where our hook is on this, is that we just need to think different. You know, if you think back to the early days, it was kind of that cut it, burn it, build it. You know, that's how we built the transportation system. That's how we built the interstate. Where did we build interstates? We built it on the cheapest land that we could. And a lot of times, through urbanized areas, that was the low-income areas. We literally separated communities because it was cheap to do it. We didn't know any better. Honestly, we didn't know any better at the time. We do today. Same way with biking and walking. We know more today. We know better today. That's why we need to be engaged, be knowledgeable, be realistic, but be a leader. You need to help incorporate these items within projects. Because again, I can't stress enough, it's a zero-sum game. Get what you get. There's not unlimited sources of funds. Even though we've got a ton of different resources, in the end, we only get what we get. And we have to use to the best what we can the dollars that we have.
Go back to Jessica first.
So this might be kind of a dumb question. I should probably understand all these relationships a little bit better being in the business, so to speak. But can you explain a little bit more about the organizational hierarchy, the relationship between US DOT, FHWA, state DOTs, and I guess who is whose boss, so to speak? And you know, when the FHWA has a guide, how does, not, you know, Ben sort of talked to it, how does that guide get filtered down, but is that guide required to be used? Because it seems like there's oftentimes a disconnect between state DOT and what we're seeing coming out of US DOT and what we're seeing coming out of FHWA. So I'm looking for kind of the organizational hierarchy or relationship between those different organizations.
And thank you for the question. I think that's good. Connecting the dots, I think, what you said. US DOT, just think of it as a big umbrella, okay? US DOT has all these different transportation modes underneath it, which Federal Highway Administration is one. We are one of a number of federal rail, federal transit, Federal Highway Administration,
Aviation.
FAA, I mean, so that's all under the US DOT umbrella. Now, within the Federal Highway Administration, my boss, Greg Nadeau, who is our administrator. And so he's a political appointee. And then we have under him would be Butch Widely, who is our executive director. He is the highest non-political person within our organization. As I mentioned, every state has a division office. There is a division administrator in that office who is responsible for the delivery of the federal aid program for that state, okay? But what's a key piece here is it's a federally funded, state-administered program. I want you to understand this piece. State-administered, federally funded. I cannot, as the head of the Office for Montana, I cannot, nor do I have the authority to pick any project in this state. I don't administer the program, the state DOT does. So they're the ones that pick it. Now, where I come in is the project that they're wanting to do eligible for the funds that they want to use for that project? Now, I do have a say in that. If they want to use funds that are designated for the interstate to build somebody's driveway in their backyard, sorry, that's not going to happen. Because there's rules on how we spend the funds. But the state administers the program. They're the ones that pick the projects. They're the ones that say where the money needs to go. Because they've got data. They have, I mean, honestly, the state of Montana is in a pretty good place. We use data very well to help determine what projects we're doing. And in fact, the state just stood up their Safety Information Management System, or SIMS for short, about a year ago. I was so excited about this software because it is helping us determine where high crash potential is from the data. So what we're doing is we're going out and fixing things before somebody gets killed. because we've got data that shows that a certain type of curve in a rural area has a 3 times higher probability of killing someone, and we're going to fix it before someone dies. This is, I'll tell you, this was a monumental shift for the department. I can't tell you how excited I am. And we're making great strides. That's how we use data. That's where we can make the biggest impact. But connecting that dot then, we provide the funds. The state selects the project. The MPOs, an MPO is a Metropolitan Planning Organization, which you have to have 50,000 or more to be considered an MPO, which Missoula is. Now that gives you some status, let's say. So you have the ability now as an MPO to select projects within your area with input from the state DOT. And then you provide that through a planning process, okay? So it all really emanates from the locals. Within your area, you can help determine what type of projects get built here. You have, as an MPO, you have the authority to do that. And so hopefully I'm connecting the dots for you. I kind of shot off a little bit, and I apologize for that. But, you know, it's DOT, federal highway to the state, state to the locals. That's kind of that hierarchy of funding. Now, you talked about guides. And, well, the state DOT is not following the guide. It is just that. It's a guide. It's not a law. It's a guide. And they're put out there to help determine what the best practices are. But it's not a thou shalt, because not in all cases is it the best solution for that specific area, okay? And so for one city or one state, this type of design, because of the way the state, local, you know, the community, the demographics, whatever, it's perfect for this instance. Move to even to another town in that state, that solution is not appropriate. And so it all has to work together, and it really comes down to communicating, understanding, and knowing what's best for that community. Because in the end, as we saw, the grim facts, if we're designing things that are not safe, if we're moving projects forward that ultimately are going to be not as good a solution, because it's what we think we want, safety needs to rule, honestly. And whether you're driving a car, riding a bike, or walking, safety must be first and foremost. Because anything more, any death, whether it's in a car, biking, or walking, is, in my opinion, is unacceptable. And we need to be striving every day to try to reduce fatalities. Did I answer your question? Hopefully? Yeah. Okay.
Jen?
I have a question for Shana. In our community in Billings, we have this idea that it is a zero-sum game, which there is a certain amount of money. But then I'm driving and I see all of these turning arrows, and I know that these turning arrows in the middle of the street cost about $600 for each one of those. And then I go to other states and I see where they don't have all of these turning arrows. And I ask my friends, I'm like, there's no turning arrows in the middle of the road here? You only use them at the pockets? What's going on here? And so is there any guidance coming down maybe from the DOT? Or, I mean, I guess I don't necessarily understand how it is a zero-sum game when it comes down to the project itself, because I look at lane widths, and then I look at all these little chevrons that go in, and I look at all the turning arrows, and if the package of turning arrows is $600, and then the bike lane itself, the little, I like to call them the dead bicyclist. They call them the helmeted bicyclist. I don't know, I just prefer the bicycle symbol. That's just my personal opinion. Those are also $600. So if you take away an arrow, and then you put in, and you're already putting the stripe down the side of the road, and you just put a little bike symbol there, I mean, there's marginal costs, putting in bike lane signage and, or whatever. But then also the thing we've been hearing in Billings, I guess, is it's fiscally conservative to do it right the first time. The city of Billings, for example, was not adhering to the federal highway guidance on the ADAs, the ramps that were supposed to go in. This was before my time. But the city, I guess, was forced to do that. And so is there any talk, any discussion within the human environment on maybe the perceived costs and maybe that it's not so much a zero-sum game, and looking at your return on investment in the land use, for example, if you put in a separated bike lane, you know, they see the increase in return in revenue. And if you put in a highway, which you mentioned, when you demolish all of that land, there's a decrease in revenue. There might be an increase probably regionally, but I guess it's very, very complicated in that funding. And so is there any discussion at that level, at the very, very 30-foot level, I guess, and sort of take away a chevron, put in an arrow over here?
Yeah, to my knowledge, and I want Kevin to jump in because he's more familiar with the situation than I am.
Yeah. What you've hit on, and it's a good question, what you've hit on is safety. You're talking about the chevrons and things for passenger cars.
Well, for people.
Okay. The #1 killer in the state of Montana is rural run off the road fatalities. About 80%. 80% of all fatalities in vehicles are rural run off the road. And so what the state has done is focused heavily. What can we do for some, and it is, some minor costs to help reduce some of these rural fatalities, some of these issues. And so, again, when you're you want to talk at a 30-foot level, it's a discussion. Okay, in urban.
30-foot urban.
Okay, it's a discussion that you need to have with your MPO. I understand that. And so you are in control there. You're within your city boundaries. Have that discussion with your state DOT.
But my question
what
was,
can
is
you
the
do?
Federal Highways having a discussion about this? And is there any guidance for MPOs that we could give perhaps to our public works directors or to maybe our local district administrators to help make more bang for the buck? So if you have $1 project, you can have a $1 project with this, and it still costs $1 minus maybe, maybe the chevrons are 68 inches instead of 62 inches apart or something. You see what I'm saying? And is that discussion happening, I guess? That's my question.
I would point you back to the guide that Shana and Lisa talked about, is this new design guide that came out. There's a lot of really good information in there. But there are design standards that so that when you drive from one state to another, that, the signs are the same.
Yeah,
the road widths are relatively the same. I mean, there's some flexibility there.
Right.
And so just think about it. If every state they could do whatever they wanted.
Right.
Well, drive to Europe, for crying out loud. Going from one country to another country is like going from one state to another state. Am I right? My friend here is from Ireland. What you would see is design variance so significant, and honestly, that's part of our role, is to ensure that design consistency from one to another. And so when you get into, well, let's make that, let's put the line at 2 inches wide instead of 4 inches wide, and we can save, $10, so we can put $10 over here. Am I missing the point?
No, I guess I get, why is it that certain states don't put the turning arrows in? I was in Austin, Texas, maybe someone's here from Austin. We were riding our bikes around and I noticed the middle lane, shoot, with the dots down it, we put arrows everywhere.
Okay.
And there were none. And I looked at my friends from Portland and I said, they don't put any arrows in the middle. What's going on here? So yeah, we don't do that in Portland either. And so we only put it at pockets. And so I guess
we found, and the state has found that with the best practice for our state is the design that they use. You've got a different climate in Austin. You probably saw the dots to help define what a line is. We can't use them here. Why? Because we have snow. And why? Because the plows will come and take those dots off. I mean, are they fantastic? If you've driven in California, they're great. Every state is unique. Every state approaches how they put their designs together based upon a lot of data and information. And so why we do something should be based on information that over the years we found. This is the best for us. This is helping us reduce fatalities. This is helping us reduce crashes. What we're doing is to help make the roadway safer and more efficient. And honestly, that's where it is. But in the end, it's the state's decision. As long as they're following the standard, you know, where we get in is really about the funding. Is the project that they're developing, does it meet the criteria with which these funds are eligible? It's the state's role. We're running a little long here, so I
No, actually, we're right on time. So if any of you have still any burning questions, or you leave here from this session or throughout the day, and you think, oh, I wish I'd asked this, or I wish somebody else had answered this, Shana and Lisa will be leading a roundtable discussion this afternoon, so you're more than welcome to attend that and ask some more direct questions with them. So thank you for doing that. And let's all give these three a round of applause. And again, thank you three very, very much. And we had people from around the state come together and give input on what our organization should look like and should work on. And through that founding summit, we came out with certain goals. And then it took us several months after that, many months after that, to actually formally form our organization. So one of those goals, one of the top goals in that, was that we need to develop a relationship with MDT. And that came out really strong. And MDT is this behemoth organization that I think many people don't understand. They don't know how they're structured, how they work, how they think. So this was really important that we need to build this relationship. And there was also a question, well, what does success look like once we've accomplished this? And a success measurement came out, well, when they start reaching out to us, then it'll show that we've had some success. And Director Tooley was appointed, I think about 2 months after we formally formed. We formed in November. And because of Director Tooley, we have been able to build a relationship with MDT. He has really facilitated that. And I can call, I can meet with him, I can email him. He's very responsive. If he doesn't know the question, then he directs me to the person who does know. And as a result, we've really built some good contacts within MDT, within his staff. We've seen some really good changes happening, if you will, some real increase in awareness of bicycle and pedestrian needs. So we're real fortunate to have Director Tooley visit us once again and talk more about what they're doing.
Thanks, Melinda. I'm very happy to be here today, and thanks for the great introduction. And we do have a real relationship. Melinda can call or she can email, and sometimes it isn't always real happy emails, but it's one of those relationships where if it's Melinda, I will react and I will respond and I will try and help her out and see what we can do. And the reason for that is bike walk is important to me. I'm a member of the organization. I'm not as active as I'd like to be, but I pay my dues, which is important, right? And the reason I do that is it represents me. I am not only the director of the Department of Transportation, but I cycle and I run. And so they represent things that I like to do, and they're the only ones that really do that. Now, I'm also a member of AARP, but they aren't as cool or as exciting. And none of the AARP functions, and I've never been to one, by the way, probably been at a microbrewery. So you guys win. I'm just very happy to be here. It's my third or fourth time for this group, and it's one of my favorite groups to talk to, because again, the things that you do advocate for people like me, and that's important. So a little bit of background. I was appointed to MDT late 2012 after Governor-elect then, Bullock, needed to fill his cabinet, and he sent me to MDT, and what a ride it has been. MDT is a really large organization. It's made up of about 2,200 people. It's engineers, it's maintenance folks, it's people that manage airports and railways, and anything you can imagine. Transit is very important to MDT, but it's a huge organization. And so when I came in the office, one of the things, and I've told this story before, one of the very first things I see on my new desk is a letter from Whitewalk, Montana to Governor Bullock asking him to please consider appointing a director that had bicycle and pedestrian interest in mind. Well, I think the letter got there a little late, but hopefully it worked out because we do have a good relationship. And what has happened since then, I think, has been pretty incredible. When I came into the Department of Transportation, I heard from this community specifically that we didn't listen very well to the needs of cyclists and pedestrians. That engineers didn't think the way that they should when they're designing a roadway project. They never consider who else might be using it besides something with 4 to 18 wheels on it. And since then, I don't see my chief engineer in here. I wonder where he went. But anyway, there's a measure of success I had, besides the one that Whitewalk had, and that would be when the organization starts to see things and think differently. And the day that my chief engineer came to me and said, I drug my bicycle out of the garage and actually rode down the highway, and can you tell me what you think about rumble strips? Because boy, they really are not fun to ride on. Okay? So now he's thinking that way. And then other engineers, my district administrator in Billings, for example, I don't know if anybody knows Stephen Streeter, but there's a pretty major project, you would, underway in Billings called the Billings Bypass. And cycling and pedestrian use was going to be a major issue with that. And when Stephen Streeter looked at a bridge that is going to cost many millions of dollars and trying to figure out how to get all users on that bridge, when he made the comment that if we can, we should, I knew Stephen had changed his way of thinking. So although none of these things are happening as quickly as any of us would like, or we don't have enough money to do all the things we want, I think that the foundation has been laid for a much longer and hopefully productive relationship between MDT and this community. So I'm pretty excited about that. We've done a lot of great things together. We're going to continue to do things together. Let's go back to rumble strips for a second as a measure of some kind of success. Engineers in the past would put a rumble strip out of at least a foot, and they put it right down the middle of the shoulder because that's convenient. And also the quality control wasn't really important because we just care about what's in between the white lines. Now, after considerable input from you, we look at applying the right fix to the right place at the right time, including rumble strips. I was invited down to ride a bicycle by West Yellowstone on 287 up by Quake Lake because there was a project there that was going to involve rumble strips and was going to shut down access to that area for cyclists. if it had gone the way other projects in that area had gone. And it was a threat to a small business. So I was invited down, and I took a ride, and I rode down US 287, and I saw what the deal was, and took it back to the chief engineer, who had also just gotten an email from Melinda. Surprise. Talking about this thing that they do in Iowa called rumble stripes. Well, we decided by the time we were done with the design of that project to do two things. One, use rumble stripes, which are still proven just about as effective, but take up less real estate, and also to narrow the lane by a foot on each side to give a little bit more real estate to the cyclists. So in the end, that project that looked like it was going to ruin a business winds up being more than what they have now. And so we're pretty excited about that. So your input was very important into that, changing that way of thinking. Doesn't mean that there aren't challenges, and we're going to have to walk through these together. You have probably seen some good news, and you probably have seen some bad news in how my agency is funded. Right now, for the first time in over a decade, we have a long-term transportation bill that's mostly funded, but it's there. It's a 5-year policy bill with about 4.5 years of funding, and believe me, after working on this for my entire tenure at the Department of Transportation, I'm fine with that. I'm just glad to quit dealing with 6-month extensions. But anyway, there is dependable federal funding for the foreseeable future. That gives the department the ability to plan and carry out important projects. It's an increase in funding, slight increase in funding, but, so that's all good news. And the bad news is, while we're focusing on the federal funding, we also have a state fund. The Montana State Fund has issues. It hasn't seen an increase in revenues on the gas tax side since 1994. That's 22 years. And during that time, our federal aid program has gone from $100 million to now over $400 million. So if you're matching $100 million at 87 cents on the dollar, or 13 cents on the dollar, Kevin, I'll get the math right, you're the 87 cents, I'm the 13. If you match it that way at 100 million, of course, it's way less than 400 million. So there's a pressure on the fund. Construction costs have increased dramatically since then. Oil is much more expensive. Materials are much more expensive. Wages are higher. So there's a lot of pressure on the construction side from that. Maintenance is no different. Maintenance is much more expensive than it has been in the past. And you add up all these pressure points, and the state fund has issues. We left the legislative session this year promising them that we would have a $10 million balance in the account at the end of the biennium that they're approving expenditures for. That's not enough. We found pretty quickly that as you drop below $40 million, that you're going to have more and more days where you're going to have trouble paying those bills to the maintenance folks, to the contractors. And so the optimal balance is $40 million. We were aiming for 10, we need 40. So the news you probably have seen is, it wasn't quite accurately reported, but it said the Department of Transportation has a $25 million shortfall. That's not the case. We just had to adjust our spending to fit what we needed for cash. The legislature has given us plenty of authority to spend money. The income isn't matching the expense. And there's two sides to the expense. Not only what we do, but there's a considerable amount of money that's taken out by the Department of Justice to the tune of $40 million per year. If you look at the constitutional restriction on the state special revenue fund, it could be spent for highway construction and highway safety. So MDT is clearly in. Highway Patrol is mostly clearly in. But then there's some other agencies that are in there, like driver's licensing, crime lab, law enforcement academy, justice centralized services, and a whole gamut of smaller operations. And you put all of that onto that fund, and eventually unfortunately during my watch, it looks like it's going to run into deficit unless we adjust how we spend money. I cannot control how DOJ spends money, but I do have to control how MET spends money because we're the ones that manage that fund. So what does that mean to you? Right now, if we have one request on any roadway project, it's a separated use path. And I'm a fan of those because, as you know, I cycle and I run. I don't want to run on the shoulder of a highway, and I don't want to bike on the shoulder of a highway if I can help it. But the fact of the matter is, there just isn't money to construct those paths right now. So what's the department going to do? We're, at least if we have a roadway project that doesn't already include a separated use path in design, what we will not do is harm the right-of-way to preclude future inclusion of a separated path. I think there's a lot of groups that are wanting to help out transportation. I think the money will come. But right now, at least for the plan that we have to assume that we won't get that help. And so that's how we're going to react. We can't afford to construct or maintain separated use paths that aren't already in the project plan. Now that's not fun news to deliver to my, hopefully my parents. We'll see if I do notice I do have a door behind me. You know, that we want to do this. And we want to maintain these paths. The way that the ones that exist now, you'll see that they're falling into disrepair. And that's because we don't maintain them. And the reason we don't maintain them is, well, Mr. McBroom was here, and he probably explained it. I don't know. He probably very bluntly explained how, knowing Doug McBroom. But the fact of the matter is, we didn't maintain them because we did them for communities, and we wanted communities to have some buy-in into the game. But we would rather maintain all these ourselves. We're okay, I'm gonna brag, we're the best at this. And we have an asset management plan that is far better than any other in state government or county government. And if given the chance, we could maintain those better than anybody. But the fact of the matter is, we can't do that. So, right now. So we face some challenges. So I was really excited to see the workshop on collaborative relationships and building projects through collaboration yesterday, because we, as a group with a relationship, are going to have to work together over the next several years to make this come together and work for the betterment of our entire state. We can do it. I'm very convinced of that. And we've had a lot of success. And I think we'll continue to have successes. So with that, I also want to talk about, has everybody met Michelle yet? No? Michelle has been hired as our new bike ped coordinator for the Department of Transportation. So when you have, you can, Melinda, you can still call me. But you know, don't cut Michelle out. I'm kind of hard to catch sometimes. I get busy, and if you send me an email in the middle of the night, I might not get back to you. Michelle should. That's kind of her job. So if you have concerns, or I just encourage you to introduce yourself to her while she's here, and form that relationship at that level as well, because that's where it gets done. So. That's pretty much what I have for comments today, but I always like to leave this with some kind of question and answer period, because we only see each other once a year, and I want to make sure that if I missed anything, it's important to get it out right there.
I want to commend you on the trail inventory, the maintenance plan you did. I remember when I first opened it, I said, darn. And I thought it was very well done. And methodology, it's having the session methodology. That's a compliment. I have a real tough question for you.
All right.
It's basically, since you're a runner, can you keep up with the governor?
No. And should I? I mean, think about this for a second. If you're playing golf with the boss, should he win? But he's an amazing runner. He's run over 20 marathons. And he could go out right now probably and qualify for Boston, which is just something I think is amazing. But I do thank you for that on the inventory, and that reminds me, I didn't also acknowledge Representative Ed Grief, if you haven't met him. That inventory you referenced came as a result of a bill that he and Melinda pushed through together. It was supposed to have funding attached to it, but it was late in the session, and they were in the no mood at that point to spend any money. But if that had passed, we'd have had a lot more money for maintenance, and MDT would have been doing a lot of that maintenance that I told you we were so good at. So thank you for that. Didn't mean to forget you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
How does the state of Montana keep abreast of design innovation and tech transfers in road construction and, different plans for transportation? Do we depend on our contractors, or do you have an office that does that? For example, in the country of France, they're making solar highways. Have you heard about this?
Yes.
Solar panels that are embedded right into the road. Not that we do that here, but how do we stay abreast with, rumble stripes instead of strips and that kind of thing?
Well, that's a good question, and we're all part of a larger group called AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, Highway and Transportation Officials, and that's I make sure that we keep involved in that, because that's where a lot of those things come from, and we also don't shy away from relationships with groups like this, because you sometimes get ideas that engineers and others can't come up with. So we pay attention to that, and frankly though, I've got to tell you, we're behind the times in a large amount here in Montana, mainly because the investment hasn't been made in the internal infrastructure for a lot of innovative design. I think we do really well, but I think the contracting community is ahead of us on things like 3D design and e-construction and things that we should be doing that would probably be more effective and cheaper in the long run, and do the things we want to do. If we could do it for less, we could do more. And that's what we're working on right now. And so we're trying to find, in the midst of all this, a way to invest in those kinds of capabilities. So I think the contracting community is a little ahead of us on that, but we're doing the best we can. I think we do pretty darn well, considering. Kevin, are we doing okay?
Yeah.
All right.
That's an EDC.
Oh, yeah. Every day counts. Yes, sir.
Director Tooley, if I could just take a minute to address maintenance and say to all of you here, the Department of Transportation has started a wonderful project statewide, and what these paths within the right-of-way of those state roads. So you're all familiar with that. You know the meaning of that in our culture and going forward, and how huge that is. The missing piece of the puzzle, and this is a really large piece, is maintenance. Consistent maintenance on the path, and that is not in the budget of contracting. It doesn't come out of that. So we've got to find a way to provide the funding. The maintenance can be done. Everything's in place for them to do that. We've got to find the funding that can be added to this in a separate way. And so the bill I brought last time was to use our vehicle license renewal. So this would be similar to what State Parks did, adding an opt-out. And Director Tooley and Melinda and I, as we crafted that bill, the idea of putting that's a user fee in a way. We could justify that very easily. 99% is other than kids. You all own or operate a vehicle, right? And so in that license renewal, we thought that's a good way to do that. I think it's important that I bring some kind of legislation again for maintenance, and I'd invite any of you with ideas and brainstorming, to bring them to me, bring them to Melinda, and as we get closer to legislative time, we'll craft, and maybe we need more than one bill. We can put a couple together and try to get them through the Dome building and in Helena. And then once you get into the political arena, it has its challenges as well. And so maybe having a couple of bills would be a way. So I just want to congratulate the effort that has come from Department of Transportation to deal with this and their willingness to deal with it, and see if we can create something. So give us some ideas going forward, and we'll try to do this again.
Well, I've got one. I tried to pitch it to Jim Sayer once, and he wasn't a fan of it, but a quarter on a pint of beer. everything we do ends in a brewery. We can have facilities.
That's going to be a $50 million maintenance budget.
Yes, sir.
Director Tooley, again, thank you for coming again every year. We always appreciate it. And your visits to Billings, we always appreciate as well. In talking about funding, in talking about maintenance and new funding, I had the pleasure of going to NACTO in Austin, which is city transportation officials, not highway and transportation officials. And what they found, surprisingly to me, was that the very conservative areas are passing the very progressive legislation for funding. Like Kentucky was the first state in our union, I believe, to index the gas tax when it was $4 or $5 a gallon. Then it dropped, and they were also the first state to then put a floor in place. Wyoming, the gas tax, I think they just 10 cents more. Are those discussions going on about when was the last time the gas tax was raised? I think you said
Yeah, the '93 legislature put it into effect for '94, and so there are a lot of groups talking about that. There's an infrastructure coalition headed up by the Chamber of Commerce that's looking at it. The contractors are a part of that. We're not advocating for any one solution because obviously we're in a pretty sensitive position to do that, but we're happy to share information with groups, and frankly, indexing the gas tax is not a bad idea if something comes forward, but how do you index it? I'd prefer, if you see it in the halls, to index it to the consumer price index instead of, because that would more correlate with construction. And also you won't see, Virginia did the same thing. They were making a lot of money when it was $4 a gallon, and now they're laying people off and not doing anything. So I mean, it's you don't make the big highs, but you don't see the low lows. It's pretty steady, and it would match probably the inflationary rate of construction, which is and maintenance, which is what it's all about. A lot more predictable.
Exactly.
And that's important in our business. Because too much money is almost as much trouble as not enough money.
Well, I'm a planner, and predictability is what we preach.
Right.
I think there's a question over there.
Oh, yes, sir.
I was going to ask another funny question, is as we see the tourism sector just continue to blossom and grow in our state, are there any attempts to capture funding from tourists to help mitigate some of the impacts on our roadways to cover those, and our trails to cover those maintenance pieces?
Well, there might be a seasonal increase in fuel taxes. That's one of the things I hear floating out there. I mean, that would be a good way to capture some of that. But thanks for pointing that out, because that's another collaboration I forgot to mention, is that Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and ourselves and Commerce have actually sat down and started looking at places to put cycle-friendly camps in Fish, Wildlife, and Park locations, close to where people want to go. So we should, if we aren't talking, Jim, we should.
We've been working on comments on that.
There you go. We're trying not to mess up the highway for them in those areas and make it a lot more attractive to go between those. So yes, there's people looking at capturing some of those impacts, and on the other end, there's ways to make all our lives better. Yes?
I have a question with respect to the sort of data side of things. During the Federal Highway presentation this morning, we heard about the great updates to the safety management system and whatever. I guess my question is, sort of getting to the inputs to that system. Currently, right now, I think there are a lot of holes in bicycle and pedestrian data that is feeding that system. And I'm curious about, one, whether there's going to be any movement toward collection of bicycle and pedestrian volumes statewide. And second, I guess, if there's opportunity or whatever to attempt to improve the crash data recording, that is, that comes from local agencies, obviously, that's not under your direct supervision, but, sort of some standardization of that so that we are getting more robust data input into that system.
The crash data is based on a standard called MUC, Model Minimum Uniform Crash Criteria. It sounds about as fun as it is. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of push and pull on trying to decide what that is. Engineers want a lot more data, and the cops on the roadside want to give less data because, let's face it, it's a 25-year-old kid that'd rather be out fighting crime, although a traffic crash is probably the result of some crime. And it's hard to get that data, that quality that you're looking for. One thing that's also missing is the health side of it in there. I think a lot more quality would be captured if we and DPHHS could work together to get there. And good news is we just stood up an executive leadership team, and my counterpart in public health is on that. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about. So for the first time, you have public health realizing that traffic crashes are a public health issue, and that maybe we should work together. So there might be something that comes out of that. But again, not overnight. But I agree with you. The data is very spotty, and we have a great system, but we need something on the input side of it.
How about on the sort of volume side of things? I know that communities are taking these tools and doing a pretty robust program. They install some counters and do volunteer counseling, so we do something with those. But just sort of curious at the state level if there's discussion about how to do that.
That's incredibly difficult in a state with less than 1 million, well, about 1 million people, and 147,000 square miles. We looked at Strava, but not everybody's on that because we talked about not only the Hefkin Lake and Quake Lake issues, but also what's very important to adventure cycling is Montana 13, right out there on the windswept prairies between Circle and Old Point. I'll be darned, there are people riding out there, but you can't really tell how many are. No one really has that data available in a way that you can actually plan something from. All we can say is, yes, cyclists are there. And but to do what communities are able to do on a statewide level is something that's beyond our capability. Yes.
I just had a question. First of all, I also want to thank you for everything. I know we're running late. But, I was just involved with a training where we had 9 communities come, and in the middle of that training, someone stood up and said, I heard WT's not doing any more shared use paths anymore. And then we get this discussion with these. So what I really love to hear or know from you is because I think we all agree that transportation is all modes, and that we all think the future is about balancing those modes and really being creative about how we're getting around, and that we can't build ourselves out of congestion and all that kind of stuff. So I just want maybe a little more explanation of, I'm sure that there are other cuts on all sides in terms of how this funding is shrinking and how we can't do certain things, but the perception comes that we're just not doing side paths anymore. And I would love to give you the opportunity to sort of dispel that or have us understand more why, are we just not building any new roads anymore? Because, I'm just trying to figure out how the balance comes up with that.
Sure, and here's what we're doing. If there is a shared use path as part of an already designed, pre-budgeted project, then that can continue. What we're not doing is, for example, down in your area, there's a safety project that's 1.5 miles long, and the community now wants a 7-mile bike path added onto that. We are not doing that because we don't have the money to either build or maintain. So if it isn't there now, it won't be if it's not part of the project. But it goes back to my other comment. At the same time, we're not going to destroy the right-of-way where we can't include it later, or some other group can't coordinate with us to do it. The group in Billings, BikeNet? Yeah, TrailNet, very successful in doing that, and collaborating with the city and the state to get things built. As a matter of fact, they're talking about one now that needs to be completed. So are we building them with our money right now? No, not unless it's part of a pre-designed, already planned federal aid project. It comes down to state funds. We're not doing anything with state funds, and that's not already planned. So.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how do we talk about this to communities where it doesn't come out to be looking negative? You know, I really want to understand.
I would love to be able to spin this bottle.
I just want to use some ammunition to say, you know, we don't have the money, and they're not just cutting out bike head. There's a lot of other things that we're not doing along with that.
Right now, building this little bridge in Billings.
Right, it's state-funded construction is of all kinds. Frankly, has been cut to almost zero. We have to do some because we have to, in order to keep a favorable match, we have to do a certain amount of effort, which will include state-funded construction. But like, you know, there's a lot of things like some state-funded projects that are frankly fun to do, some small bridges and those types of things. We're not doing those right now, and we won't probably until at least fiscal 19, and that depends on what happens in the legislature this January, between January and May. So if that goes well, then 2019 will go probably a lot better. But we have to assume we won't get any help, and this is the world we have to live in. So we have to, in order to deliver basic services, kind of take a hard line on it, and that's why we're where we're at. Hopefully it helps, and you can call me anytime to ask me any questions. But I know I've got a meeting with Jean, and she's fine with me staying here, but I've got a meeting after Jean. That probably isn't okay, me staying here. So if there's one more question, I can take that, and then I'll turn it over to Linda. All right, again, thanks for, Jim.
Well, I have to ask you, because it's a relatively cost-free project, but what do you forecast for the possibility, kind of apropos of the bike tourism question that was asked about U.S. bicycle routes in Montana, looking at that for the future, because it doesn't really require any new infrastructure.
Like signage?
Planning. There's no mandate for signage. You can designate the routes. It's a kind of a good first step towards also making Montana more bike-friendly as a whole.
Well, I always get caught up in the sign side of it, so we're going to have to talk more about that. If there's no mandate and there's no money, I'm happy to talk. Yeah, magic. Let's do that. You know, there's a couple of folks sitting right next to you that would be definitely